aloha in our day. Spread a little aloha around the world. Cause it's Breakfast with Bob. Cheers.
And Poncho Man, everybody! Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob from Kona at Huggo's on the Rocks. My name is Bob Babbitt, brought to you by Master Spas, SFuels, right fuel, right time. HOKA, Fly Human Fly, Deboer Wetsuits, Quintana Roo. Our Challenge Athletes Foundation, we've now raised $180 million to keep Challenge Athletes in the game of life through sport. Our next guest, three-time Ironman World Champion, two-time 70.3 World Champion, Olympic gold medalist from 2008. Give it up for Jan Frodeno. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic. It's great to be back here.
I'm so glad you're racing, and we're breaking that news right here. The day of race registration, you're going to be out there. I love it.
Yeah, I've been tweaking my position. My swim's finally come around. That's taken a while. I realized at about 13 minutes after the 500-meter mark today that maybe it's not my year, but who knows?
There's always the run.
Yeah, the run, apparently, yeah. It's a place to make it up, but it seems like the new generation is leaving very little room for error.
I mean, it's funny. I'm looking at at who to interview for the show, and I'm looking at all these splits. And it used to be if someone was swimming 50, if they're riding 4:15, 4:20, and they're running, 2:48, 2:50, they're sort of in the play. Now it's you got to be swimming 45, you got to be riding 4:02, you've got to be running 2:35. When you look at these splits, does it just blow you away?
Yeah, it's beautiful to see where the sport has gone over the years, right? I mean, that's definitely something that we've seen. People blaming things on run shoes, and then it's aerodynamics, and then it's this and that. But I think, in all honesty, like, athletes are improving. The sport is not as young as it used to be. I kind of look back and look at how much discovering we did along the years. There was a lot of experimenting, and you would know much more. The San Diego cartel of athletes just figuring it out on the fly. You just go out and you ride 5 hours and you run 2 if you've got it in the legs, and if not, well, next time you try again. And I think that kind of science is coming into it, as well as nutrition. I think has changed a lot.
Right.
If I look at some of the early races, I think my first Kona I took 2 gels.
The whole day
on the marathon, you know, and it's like now it's like if you're not taking 4 an hour, you're in trouble.
Right.
And yeah, it's just it's the way the sport has evolved, and it's cool to see.
So when you first came over here, and you after winning the gold, you did another 4 years for another Olympic cycle, and then got over here, and that was the year Sebi won. Was your first time here, and basically, like I said, you took a couple gels. You sort of forgot to change into your run stuff. I mean, pretty much a lot of different stuff happened that day. What did you take from that race? Because you still got, third or something like that there? What did you take from that race that allowed you to come back and win?
Probably anger to make sure that I've got that fire in the belly, and I really wanted to know that whether I could do it or not. There was a lot of myth surrounding Hawaii and the kind of the energy lab and this mystical place where you find yourself or not. And I knew I could make it. I could make it through the distance, and that was part of Hawaii back in those days. It was one of those races you don't know. I mean, history has shown people blow up 200 meters before the finish line and crawl their way down. That seems to be happening a lot less. And but back in those days, we had the great fortune, and I would say luck, to be in that time when we could go out and discover, that it was all new. It was all, a little bit something to add to the puzzle every single time, but you still didn't know if it would ever add up.
So how old were you the first time you came here?
Old? What was it? 33, 34, 33.
33 years old.
Yeah.
These guys are coming, they're 21, they're 22, and they're going fast, and they're not intimidated by anything. When you see people coming here so young, and there's a lot of folks who people have never heard of who are going to be a factor on race day. People coming here so young and not following the ITU and not following the Olympic thing. This is the mantra. This is the goal. This is where we want to get to. Does it blow you away that they come here so young and are not afraid of the moment, not afraid of the lights?
No, not at all. That's what's exciting. You know, the last thing that's exciting is a pro who says, well, if I have a great day, I would like to maybe finish top 10. No one wants to hear that.
No.
And you know, there is a generation of brash young kids who are just like, nah, I'm here to win and I'm here to smash the record. And honestly, that's what records are there for, right? They're to inspire the next generation to come out and give it their all. I think the support has gotten there, but also, you know, the training science, if you look at it, I look back at the times when, you know, you mentioned ITU. Every Sunday night, we used to have a A4 piece of paper, and you'd have to write down what you trained that week.
Yeah.
And you'd have to say, well, I thought I did this much in zone 3, and this much in zone 4, and this much in zone 2. And it was just pen and pencil, and you know...
No real numbers. You're sort of making it up.
Yeah, you're making it up. And that is obviously, nowadays, given the next generation, also... the ability to believe, because they know they've got the numbers are out there, and they know they can make them add up, and that's, you know, what makes the racing exciting.
Back in the day, a lot of guys in triathlon and running, they didn't share anything, right? It's like, here's my double secret workout, I'm not telling you anything. Or if they did, is they were telling, the runners would say, I'm running 130 miles a week when they're running 90, just to try to throw people off. And
isn't that all that the Norwegians do?
That's what exactly. I love Gustav on that the bike with his handlebars way the hell out there. I love that. Everybody's going out and trying that, and Gustav's just sort of screwing around with everybody. So when you look at what the athletes were not sharing back then, and now people are sharing everything. They're basically saying, if you want to, this is the training I'm doing. If you want to do it, here it is. Here's what my VO2 max, all this stuff. People are sharing everything, which I think is making people better, because the high school kids and the college kids are able to see what the best in the world are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person, but probably I got to give credit, some kind of credit for Lionel and Talbot, you know,
Yes.
who go out there and they share every minute of a pro's day. And, you know, every 2 years that cycle repeats, and it's like, I made that mistake. I'm never going to make that mistake again until 2 years from now. And that's why we love Lionel. I mean, he's, you know,
Honest,
he is somebody
raw,
out
yeah.
there. He's honest, he's raw. And I think that mental struggle that goes on in everybody's head, you know, have I done enough? Have I done the right preparation? What should I be doing now? What tire pressure is necessary, and where can I find XYZ? I do think it makes the sport more approachable, and it takes away some of the mystique, and probably is not only helpful for the pros, but also a lot of age groupers.
So Lionel, we chatted with him last week, and he was saying, you know what I figured out? I figured out that it doesn't matter if Jan Frodeno's coaching me or if it's Olaf, it doesn't matter. If they give me a workout, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it 100%. If Jan says I'm running 15 miles and I've got a broken rib, I'm still going to run 15 miles because he told me. But if I tell myself I'm going to run 10 miles and I don't feel it that day, I can move it to the next day. But I couldn't do it with Jan or anybody else coaching me. What was your experience like trying to basically help Lionel along the way?
You know, Lionel, we had a great stint. The man, he was struggling to find any motivation to come back to Ironman, and he, you know, after his experience here on the island, kind of had done with Ironman, and I think we found a level of consistency that perhaps he hadn't found before. You know, he always had those massive days that he's famous for, but it doesn't really matter if you don't show up the next day and do it again. You know, that was part of my journey as well for the year, to see if coaching would be something that would be interesting. And I certainly am not a coach, but I think I can put together a team, and that's what we did. But Lionel is where he is because of who he is, and you can't take that and you can't change that, and that's really important for him to realize, right? Because I can only give him a program if he tells me he's got a broken rib. If he doesn't tell me he's got a broken rib, well, then it's a lot harder to say, well, maybe back off today. And I honestly think he's just got such a passion, and probably my biggest job was just to reignite that spark,
Yes.
Get him going again, find the flow, and here he is, you know, ready to give it another shot.
So first time you're here, you don't win. The next 2 times you do win. And I remember one year you just looked like you were totally in control all day. And then we were interviewing you at the championship edition. You're like, I was ready to drop out 14 times. Like from the outside, you can't tell what's going on inside you or anybody else. Take us through just convincing yourself I'm okay. I'm leading the race. I shouldn't be dropping out right now.
That's the biggest thing about Ironman, right? Is just sticking to it, just putting one foot in front of the other, and when you feel awful, that moment is going to come in the race.
Yeah.
And that is much of the joy, as bad as that sounds, is showing yourself that you can when you think you cannot. And overcoming adversity, I think, is such a big part of the reward of this beautiful sport of ours, that you come out and everybody thinks, my God, this is impossible. You know it's possible. You know somewhere there is something there, but you still have to go and take those steps. Nobody can take them for you. You can't pay a coach to help you out and take you from mile 20 to 22. You have to go and run, walk, or however you do it, get through that. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge. I always had this mantra of a NASA rocket coming up, Cape Canaveral. For those of us old enough to remember,
I remember
how the rockets used to take off before Elon Musk, and it was just such a powerful image. And I always had this rocket, I want, I can, I will. That was kind of my mantra that I would keep telling myself, and just keep, grounding myself. If I was having a great moment and thinking I could push 420 watts on the way back from Harvey, didn't have many of those moments, but when I did, just to calm down. And when I was only pushing 220 watts and felt like I couldn't push any harder, to also calm myself down and be like, okay, look, take on some nutrition, wait a couple of minutes, see what happens. And that is one of the keys of making it through this race.
You win the gold medal in 2008, and then you win here in 2015. So what was the difference? Obviously, when you win the gold medal, the Olympics is, everybody on the planet knows about the Olympics. The Ironman, it's different, but it's still pretty damn prestigious. How did your life change after each of those?
Pretty radically, to be honest. I mean, the first one, ironically, the Olympics in 2008 was the first race I ever won. So that was the first international race I ever won. And going from, a kid who's struggling to make it, borrowing bike parts here and there, and having, first signs of support, to winning Olympic gold medal, and all of a sudden having golden parts custom painted for your bike and delivered, and having people deliver boxes and boxes upon gear, and all of a sudden your bank account being full enough that you can actually make it. It was a massive change, absolutely. But in terms of the prestige and recognition, there is something to be said for consistency. And I think if you repeat a big success over a period of time, and especially if you've had to overcome adversity in the space in between, at least in Germany, that was celebrated on a whole nother level. I mean, that definitely turned on the limelights in a way I had not seen before, and changed my trajectory again. And so I have to say, which one was more? I think they kind of go together, and it was a unique combination.
When I walked in here today, I see Olympic gold medalist and silver medalist Simon Whitfield, who was a big part of what happened in 2008. Coming down the last part of that race, Simon, all of a sudden, who'd been dropped, comes flying by everybody. What was your thought when this guy comes by?
Yeah, I remember him, and I couldn't see him because he was coming from behind, and there was a big screen on this pontoon that they'd built in Beijing, and I saw this guy coming from behind, and he threw his cap away.
Yeah.
And just at the same moment started sprinting. And I was like, okay, here we go. It's on. And I was kind of glad at that moment, because that was my whole game plan. I knew that it was going to come down to a sprint. But if I look at it nowadays, I mean, that was the performance of the day, right? I mean, in terms of showing tenacity and overcoming adversity, like we just talked about in a race, being dropped and then coming back to make the decisive move. That's we still have jokes about many races, but that is something I to this day deeply admire.
So with going in, and you're a guy who had not won an ITU race, and Javier Gomez was one of the most decorated guys. They're already planning a victory parade. They're already planning a party, and I remember you telling me that you knew that the race would come down to a sprint. And I mean, the confidence to go, okay, every day I'm going to do a 200-meter sprint at the end of this workout, because the Olympics is going to come down to that. And then to think that Javier's planning a party, and what are you thinking when he's saying, I'm doing a party?
Why are you throwing my party? Because
Exactly.
Quite honestly, I was one of those brash, young, cocky kids. You know,
Yes.
the same as what we've got now. It was not even that it was anything against him. It was just my dream, and my dream was a laser clear vision of what I wanted it to be, and it was my way of being, of my way of escaping my family path. And there was just something that I was probably running away from more than I was running towards, right? And it was just without alternative for me. I had this deep belief it had to work, and I was lucky enough that I had very good people around me to help me steer that boat and make sure it lands on the right pier.
So you win 2 times in a row. Then the 17, you end up walking a big chunk of the marathon, watching your countryman Patrick Lenge win your title. And then 18, you are in the best shape of your life, right? I think, because you went to 70.3 in South Africa. You run 106 off the bike. Alistair Brownlee runs 107. Gomez runs 108. It's one of the greatest races in the history of the sport. You are ready to come and win your title back. And running that 106, something happened. You ended up with, I think, a stress fracture in your hip. You're out of Kona. And at that point, are you thinking, this might be it? I don't know if I can come back in 2009 and win this. Or was it, you know what, okay, this is a little bit of a hiccup. I'm going to be back next year and win my title back.
So I think the first and most important thing here is that the difference is I never thought it's my title. And whenever somebody thought it's their title and planned a party or planned anything like that, that's when things go wrong.
Right.
There is always a certain degree of the underconfident overachiever, right? That I think is a good recipe for success in triathlon in general. 2017, yeah, that was a big setback. That really hurt. 2018, I remember sitting at the King Cam in the after race scene, and we'd had a couple of beers, and we were just sitting there, fairly depressed, to be honest.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite able to celebrate competitors' results at the time as I am now, and we signed a contract. So Felix, my best friend, and I, and Dan, my coach, we were there. And we got out a sheet of paper, Felix did, to his credit, and we wrote a letter of intent saying that all of us will turn over every single card, have a look, what can we do, where can we get back to this, and we will do everything to be sitting there in 365 days and drinking champagne instead of beer.
And it happened. And when it did happen and you guys are drinking champagne instead of beer, we still
ended up drinking beer. But
you still ended up drinking beer. But when you win it and come back when people thought, okay, is this guy done? And you proved everybody wrong and you proved yourself right in winning your 3rd title, how special was that?
So talking about Simon Whitfield, one of the most poignant things he ever said that stuck with me is you do it for 98% of the right reasons. And 2% is for the assholes out there that say you can't do it. And there is a little bit of that negative motivation, right? Like where you come out and you just like, yeah, I am going to prove you wrong. And that was definitely something that drove me in 2019. That is also something that helped me when I was lying in hospital in 2022.
Yes.
And, back then people write you off even more once you're down. And, I was 41 or 40 at the time. And, those kind of comments, I'll be honest, like they got to me. I could not separate myself from them. And that's a motivation that is pretty intense, and it's really powerful to get you going.
Right. And
when it works, it's fantastic. Once it comes together, it's not even about going out there and see, here, I proved you wrong. It's literally, it's just a fuel source that I was able to use mentally and get right towards the end of my career.
PTO Milwaukee, you're winning there, right? When again, people thinking this guy could be done, and you've got Magnus in the field. You got a lot of the big boys are there, and winning that race towards what is sort of the Twilight, right? You pretty much.
I had a torch at that time. Yeah, it was getting pretty dark.
What was that feeling like?
That was amazing. I mean, that was a long time between drinks then.
Yes.
And
Because we had all the COVID and everything too.
yeah, there was COVID, and despite a lot of things going right for me during COVID, a lot of things in terms of performance, I missed the train, right? That's when a lot of new training philosophies took off, and hungry athletes were sitting at home not knowing what to do with themselves. And I, quite frankly, the 10 weeks that we had lockdown and weren't allowed out of home, we had a great time with the family. I enjoyed. I mean, I'm still pathetic at soccer, but I was playing soccer every day with my kids, and just enjoying life really. And that's when a lot of the train left the station, and I had some time to catch back up. But no regrets. It was what it was, and I think that crash and the sepsis and everything that followed it was probably the last thing I needed once more to prove to myself that I could get there one more time and finish on my own terms. And when I was lying in hospital, I said, I'm going to get to the top one very last time. And I just wasn't quite specific enough. I did it 4 weeks before the World Champs and got into the US Open. But again, from that moment on, I knew that I was just in too good of a place in life to be chasing World Championship gold medals.
What's nice about what we get to do is we basically follow somebody's career from the first moment you came here to the moment you retired. We got to chat, which was wonderful. Same with Daniela Reef. I remember Daniela Reef was her first interview here. She was sitting here, came into town on Wednesday and goes, "Is this where they do the run? Right? Is this where the marathon goes?" Yeah, that's where the marathon goes. So from our perspective, it's wonderful to follow somebody's career. How hard is it? Because you're a young guy going, okay, my career as an athlete is done, and now what am I going to do next?
In Germany, we say athletes die twice because, as an athlete, your whole identity is tied to being a sportsman, to being a triathlete. People ask you, who are you? What are you? So I'm a professional triathlete. That's what I do. And, then I remember checking in at customs in the US, and he says, "Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, "What's with the hard questions, dude?" I don't know.
I'm not quite sure.
I'm trying to figure it out. Give me some time. And I have to say, it's been wonderful coming here. And I remember 2011, I came here for the first time in a difficult time in my career, and really got to see the magic of the island and how Kona turns into this little Olympic village for amateur athletes,
yes.
Right? I mean, the concentration of fitness that you get to see along this stretch of 500 meters between here and the start line is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And people who are so intrinsically motivated and passionate to follow this journey, it's an energy that I think is nowhere else in the world. And that's why I think Kona is so important, because it's just this little village turns into a very, very special place, for me at least, once a year. And seeing that, and seeing these people, and seeing the next generation of athletes, and having the very next generation, along with my son, who I've taken here to kind of see what it's all about. We've done a boys' trip just to, maybe he one day, maybe he wants to play the piano, but maybe he wants to come here. Who knows? We'll see. Is truly fulfilling. It's actually been exactly that, and I have zero FOMO of seeing all the people and seeing the fitness everyone's at, because I'm no longer willing to commit the amount of effort and dedication that it takes to be here, to qualify for this race. And so, I'm here with an open heart and just fully enjoying.
And when somebody wins the Ironman World Championship, they become sort of the de facto leader of the sport. And the fact that you, throughout this last decade, have done so much for the sport, and done so much to represent the sport in such a positive, upbeat way, giving back, creating your own charity, doing all sorts of great things like that. How about a round of applause for Mr. Jan Frodeno and everything he's done for our sport? You're very special. Very, very special, bud. I always appreciate you, man. Pancho Man, take us out.
Spread a little aloha around the world, 'cause it's breakfast with Bob. Chee-hoo.
Another round of applause for Mr. Jan Frodeno. We'll be drinking.